I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime, and this is Currents.
It happened at cathedrals around the world, including right here. We'll take you to a vigil for life in Brooklyn.
When God gives us beautiful gifts like this, we know truly children are a blessing from God.
Celebrating the bicentennial of a saint from Philadelphia.
He was intrigued with the missionary journeys of St. Paul, so he decided at that time he was going to give his life to being a missionary in America.
And mariachis and mass, singing the praises of the patron saint of music. Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. It may have been a holiday weekend, whether people were out of town, maybe they were out shopping, but on Saturday, many people in Brooklyn headed downtown to St. James Cathedral.
They did. There, Bishop DiMarzio led a vigil and celebrated Mass in response to a call from Pope Benedict for dioceses around the world to hold vigils for unborn human life.
La persona è un bene in se stessa. E occorre cercare sempre il suo sviluppo integrale.
Today we're gathering together to celebrate a vigil for nation life. The Holy Father, Pope Benedict XVI, has declared the first Sunday of Advent to be a time we want to pray for all life, especially life that is unborn. He himself today in Rome had a similar vigil, and we're imitating and following his example by having this prayer service for nation life. And then we will celebrate the Eucharist afterwards. So first is our Holy Hour with the Rosary. At this extraordinary vigil, celebrated here, but also by the Supreme Pastor of the Church, in union with the particular churches throughout the world, we invoke the Lord Jesus and to bestow His grace and light for the conversion of hearts. And at the same time, we shall be offering to the entire world an outstanding ecclesial witness of the Church's culture of life and love. Advent is a time we're awaiting the birth of Christ, and so Christ is in the womb for this last month, and we're also praying for those who are in the womb that they be protected, that we stand vigil with Mary, the Mother of God, as her last month of pregnancy, that we seek her intercession also for those women who are tempted not to bring their children to term. Today in the news, I heard the UN was having a wonderful meeting, and the meeting was for the intention of protecting endangered species, whales and turtles and many other endangered species. But the most endangered species in this world is the human race. Life is respected, but not human life. It seems that the human life is fallen out of favor, that human life is the province of the person who carries it, that they can bring it to term or not. It's really hard in this world where personal freedom has trumped everything to let people understand that there's a responsibility that goes beyond the individual, but a responsibility to society and a responsibility, even more importantly, to the life yet to be born.
We all have to get up and speak and pray and not just let other people do it. We all have to do it. We all have to be missionaries. We all have to be evangelists for life.
Life is a gift from God, and I really think that we need to reverence that life. We need to, understand the true sacredness of the human person, beginning with that life in the womb.
Just look at this beautiful baby here, and that speaks for itself. I mean, this is not our doing. When God gives us beautiful gifts like this, we know truly children are a blessing from God.
Let it be our pledge that we will indeed respect all life that is to be born, all nascent life, as the Holy Father has deigned to call it. May it make us ever more aware in our lives that we must work to protect life and pray to save it from destruction.
Well, you saw there a very cute child playing with a microphone.
Baby.
The kids are sometimes known to do that, especially in church, kind of had unscripted moments. Now, if you think that your child has done that and provided some unscripted moments at Mass, Check out what happened at the Vatican's vigil celebration.
You might say the Bible came to life. Jesus once asked that the little children come to him, and a young man decided to take that commandment right to heart. He dropped to his knees, as you can see right there, and he tried to get a little closer to the Pope, inching along there on his knees. Well, unfortunately, he was stopped before he actually reached his goal, but he certainly was pretty steadfast in his attempt there.
That's right, absolutely. He was trying.
He knew what he wanted to do. All right, well, there is much more current straight ahead. When we return, we'll have the day's headlines,
including a setback for a Christian woman sentenced to die in Pakistan.
Welcome back to Currents. I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Coming up in a bit, we'll strike up the mariachi band. It's part of a celebration of the patron saint of music.
Sounds good, but first let's have a look at the day's headlines. Well, voting was no easy task for a country already reeling from a deadly earthquake and a nationwide outbreak of cholera. Haitians went to the polls Sunday amid confusion and cries of fraud from many voters and candidates. CNN's Ivan Watson is in Port-au-Prince with more.
On the morning of the election, United Nations troops patrolled Port-au-Prince's eerily empty street. But soon after polls opened, voters started to complain of problems. Many could not vote because their names did not appear on polling center lists.
When I come here, I don't see my name in the list. Why? Because they want to do what they want to do. Because you see, the government don't want to claim an election in Haiti.
Do you think it's an accident?
It's not an accident.
At other polling stations, police arrested voters who allegedly cast ballots more than once. Hours before the polls closed, 12 of the 18 candidates running for president staged a raucous news conference. They made a joint declaration accusing the government of outgoing President René Préval of rigging the election in favor of his anointed candidate, Jude Celestin. Citing massive fraud, the candidates called for the election to be annulled. Then they made a public appeal to their supporters to protest peacefully against this, quote, anti-democratic act. Among the protesting candidates, the flamboyant singer-turned-politician, better known by his stage name, Sweet Mickey.
What do you mean? Are you expecting violence today?
Well,
you called for the people to come out in the streets.
Well, we call them to come out and defend their vote. They need to be able to vote. This is the one right that everyone has. I understand that the government has is accustomed to stealing the country's money, accustomed of stealing our dreams, but they cannot steal our vote.
Well, that report from CNN's Ivan Watson. Election officials say they expect to have the final tallies in by next Tuesday. A runoff between the top two presidential candidates will be held January 16th. In Pakistan, it looks like the country's president will not get the opportunity to pardon a Christian woman sentenced to death on blasphemy charges. Pakistan's High Court ruled today that Asia Bibi's fate should be decided by the court system and prohibited the president from pardoning Bibi as he said he intended. Bibi was sentenced to death for allegedly insulting the Prophet Muhammad. Meantime, a Pakistani Christian man sentenced to 25 years in prison for allegedly touching the Quran with dirty hands was set free this weekend. Reports say the country's high court is expected to clear Munir Masih of blasphemy charges. In Egypt, 156 Christians are behind bars after clashing with police over the stalled construction of a church in Cairo. Security forces put a stop to the construction over the weekend for building permit violations. Violence erupted when Christians protested the move. One person was killed and 68 others were hurt. The North Korean attack on a South Korean island last week killed 2 civilians and 2 soldiers and raised tensions in the region, but it also damaged the island's only Catholic parish. A church leader says 2 artillery shells hit the parish grounds, breaking windows and damaging the old rectory and a van. There are 1,700 residents on the island, and 450 are Catholic.
Well, the federal government is scrambling to contain the damage it says the release of hundreds of thousands of leaked documents could do to America's diplomatic efforts. The Obama administration says it is not ruling out legal action against WikiLeaks. That's the organization that published the classified documents online. And New York Congressman Peter King says WikiLeaks should be classified as a terrorist organization. Well, in addition to possibly harming diplomatic relations, the papers offer an interesting look at how the U.S. reacted to the election of Pope Benedict. Rome Reports has more.
Apparently, not even the sophisticated U.S. intelligence services were able to penetrate the walls of the Sistine Chapel. According to sensitive U.S. documents fed to the WikiLeaks website and deemed illegal by the State Department, Joseph Ratzinger's papal election came as a total surprise. The report was among a cache of 250,000 confidential American cables over the past 3 years. The not-so-top-secret document showed that the United States was expecting the first South American to rise to the throne of St. Peter's. Italian right-wing newspaper Il Giornale said on its website that American diplomats were thrown off by news reports. Some top U.S. Vatican correspondents said Ratzinger was an obvious candidate but wouldn't even pass the first round of votes in the 2005 conclave. Other hotly contested specifics of the WikiLeaks dossier were released to top international news organizations. The documents allege, among other things, that Saudi Arabia was pushing the United States to thwart a possible attack on Iran, and that the U.S. believes North Korea provided Iran with nuclear missiles that could be pointed at Western European capitals, like the Vatican's host city of Rome.
Well, a fire that broke out at the Oregon mosque attended by the would-be Christmas tree bomber has been ruled arson. Mohammed Osman Mohammed is charged with plotting to bomb the annual Christmas tree lighting ceremony in Portland. 16 firefighters were later called to the scene of a fire at this mosque. The flames were contained to a single room, and the FBI is investigating. Agents say they will not tolerate retribution attacks on Muslims. Meantime, authorities have stepped up patrols around other Islamic sites in and near Portland because Muslim leaders fear more attacks against them. Well, closer to home here, a New Jersey pastor who railed against Facebook will take a 90-day leave of absence and then return to work. Pastor Cedric Miller of Living Word Christian Fellowship in Neptune, New Jersey, told his church leaders to delete their Facebook pages recently or resign, citing his belief that the social networking site can lead to adultery. Miller later admitted to being previously involved in a three-way sexual relationship with his wife and another man. Church elders voted Sunday to keep Miller on as pastor after his leave of absence. In Brooklyn, the brutal beating of a Hasidic Jewish teacher on Thanksgiving Day appears to be a hate crime. Police say 26-year-old Joel Weinberger was walking along Harrison Avenue Thursday when three men walked up behind him and knocked him to the ground. The men tore apart Weinberger's religious clothing. Local Jewish groups are offering a $5,000 reward to help find the attackers. And finally, Catholic convert and former British Prime Minister Tony Blair went toe-to-toe with atheist author Christopher Hitchens in a debate on religion over the weekend. Blair contended that religion is a force for good in the world and said his decision to involve British troops in the war in Iraq was a matter of policy, not faith. Hitchens, meantime, said a belief in a higher power has led to untold misery throughout recorded history. The debate will be broadcast by the BBC in January.
All right, well, stay tuned. There's much more currents coming up.
Just ahead, a saint's story as it's never been told before.
I just used as much as I possibly could of his own letters, his own words, his own teachings, and I filled it in between with the story.
Welcome back. Well, not to be confused with recently beatified Cardinal John Newman is a saint with a similar looking name. John Neumann, a Redemptionist priest. Neumann was the 4th Bishop of Philadelphia, where today there is a shrine in his honor at the place where he lay in rest.
And Neumann's adopted homeland was a long way away from his place of birth, Bohemia, a place that is today known as the Czech Republic. Well, 2011 will be the bicentennial of his birth, and to learn more about him, I spoke with a modern-day Redemptorist priest, Father Richard Baver, who has just written a book about John Neumann. Father Baver, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Well, the book is St. John Neumann. It is also subtitled there, His Writings and Spirituality. And you probably can look at the cover of the book there and say, well, that looks like Newman to me. But of course, a lot of people know Cardinal John Henry Newman. And this is a different John Neumann. A little about the differences. There a lot of confusion there when people see it in writing, Father?
Well, they pronounce the name differently in different places.
Yeah.
And there seems to be some indication that maybe he pronounced it Newman when he was here, that he anglicized it. But it should be Neumann. And now with Cardinal Newman being beatified, it's probably better to go with Neumann.
There you go. There you go. To differentiate the two names.
It's going to be too confusing because they're both going to be John Newman if they.
There you go.
And that would be the difficult.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, for those who might not be familiar with St. John Neumann, tell us a little bit about his life and work and all of that.
Okay. Well, he grew up in what is the modern day Czech Republic. It was Bohemia in those days, so he's Bohemian. Oh. He went to the seminary in Budweis, now České Budějovice, and then when he was there, he read the letters of Baraga, a missionary in America, and he was intrigued with the missionary journeys of St. Paul. So he decided at that time he was going to give his life to being a missionary in America. And he transferred to Prague, the Archiepiscopal Seminary, so he could learn languages, and found out they were forbidden, so it was a bad move on his part.
Yeah.
At the end of the time, over there, he was not ordained because they didn't need any priests. So he waited around for ordination. He wanted to be ordained there, have his first Mass at home, and then come to the United States. Instead, he came over without ordination, without knowing what was going to happen, arrived in New York, 1836, started walking the streets, found the Bishop of New York, and he was just pleased and ordained him, sent him to Buffalo. So for 4 years, he was a diocesan priest above Buffalo, the whole Niagara Falls region.
Sure.
Then he went and joined the Redemptorists because he felt very lonely and wanted community life. And went there. He became the pastor of St. Philomenia's in Pittsburgh. Was called back to Baltimore, where the headquarters were, and was appointed the superior of all the Redemptorists in America. While he was there, he became the confessor of Archbishop Kenrick, who proposed him as the successor to the See of Philadelphia.
Sure.
And in '52, he became the Bishop of Philadelphia, which was 2/3 of Pennsylvania, Delaware, and part of New Jersey. So
wow.
It was a big diocese.
Yeah, a long journey for his life. Why did you choose to write this book about him?
I started years ago when I was doing my PhD dissertation, and you had to use original sources, and I knew we had them.
Yeah.
So it was a very practical reason. And then over the last 30 years, I've completely fallen in love with the man, and have continued with him all this time, and consider him a dear friend now, you know.
Well, and I understand as well that the book is written in kind of a unique way. It's written in the first person, so kind of looking through his eyes, as it were.
Yeah.
Why write the book in that way?
Well, because there have been other biographies, and I figured, why do another one? And so what I wanted to do, over the 30 years, I felt like I've gotten into his own skin. And so I thought, I'm going to write it in the first person, and if you look at the book, you'll see that much of the thing is in italics. I just used as much as I possibly could of his own letters, his own words, his own teachings, etc., in his own words, and I filled it in between with the story and wrote it so that people could just pick it up and read it.
Nice.
I think it's much more, I was not interested in a scholarly presentation, but I wanted it to be historically accurate, and so I wrote that people can read it and kind of get to know the man.
Right, there you go. And it kind of makes it more accessible to kind of a lot of different people, I would imagine, too. If you write it that way, instead of writing a scholarly book, as you say, writing it in this way might make it accessible and make it interesting for more people.
Right.
Well, next year, 2011, is the 200th anniversary of his birth. Tell us a little about the significance of that, and, of course, about anything special that might be going on to sort of acknowledge that.
Well, there's a lot of things going on, and I'm on loan for at least a year to Philadelphia, to the Shrine of St. John Neumann, as the person who knows him. And we have many programs. For one thing, I'm doing retreats, St. John Neumann retreat to all the Redemptorists of North America, one in Tucson, one in Ontario, one in Florida, one in New Jersey and one in St. Louis. And then we have various different programs that we're offering to the diocese that he was involved in, and trying to get some programs there. We have many events at the shrine celebrating the 200th anniversary, so there's a lot going on.
A lot going on there, and you can prepare for that by getting the book. Again, it's St. John Neumann, His Writings and Spirituality, and of course the author here with us right now, Father Richard Baver. Thank you so much for being here, Father. We really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks. Thank you. Peace.
Thank you. Well, we mentioned that next year is the bicentennial of St. John Neumann's birth. Well, this year is actually the 150th anniversary of his death. He died about 3 months short of his 49th birthday. Boy, he accomplished a lot in a short period of time, short lifespan there. Well, I've written more about him over on our blog. Just go to currentsny.net, click on Riding the Wave.
All right, well, stay tuned. There's much more Currents coming up. When we return, strike up the band for a saintly celebration.
It makes you think of your roots. It makes you see what's around you, and that you're not ever alone. That having the music it brings people home.
Finally tonight, we just heard about a saint who has been called an immigrant shepherd, St. John Neumann. And last week, there was also a celebration right here in Brooklyn, the city of immigrants, that had quite an international feel about it.
Indeed, the Mexican community gathered at the Basilica of Our Lady of Perpetual Help at Silver and Sunset Park, where people had a chance to listen to something you're not likely to hear at Sunday Mass. It's mariachi music. Sounds pretty good to me.
It sounds good to me, too.
Well, it was a celebration for St. Cecilia, the patron saint of music, and we sent our cameras to check it out.
Today is a celebration of the patron saint of musicians, Santa Cecilia, but it's also a day of culture and a day of pride of Mexicans and Mexican Americans here in Brooklyn, New York. The musicians, since they play and a lot of them meet each other all the time, they kind of they know that every year this is the event to come to. And you will see, I mean, it's really amazing, all of them in the Mass and then afterwards at the concert. As we reflect in a Mexican American community, Mexican community, and Latino community as a whole, I think a lot of the challenges of immigration issues and belonging to a community where there are a lot of risks and dangers, and growing up with the lack of jobs and opportunities, you want to take advantage of the pluses and the pride and the things that will make this community better. And of course, you look at the young people that are looking at the roots and their heritage, and you look at the music, and you're looking at a vibrant community that eventually will be, the principal part of this country.
It's for the community, it's free, it's for the family, it's for the musician. We celebrate the Santa Cecilia, la patrona de los músicos.
I've been in this event for 4 years. Every year I participate at singing in the Mass. I started when I was like 3 years old. I started singing because my dad taught me how to.
It makes you think of your roots. It makes you see what's around you, and that you're not ever alone. That having the music it brings people home. When there's people here that are from Mexico, that were born and raised there, and coming and listening to the music, I know can be very soothing, something very relaxing to a lot of people. The one song at the very end of the Mass, after we finish playing, we play it all together. It's La Negra. It was the very first song I've ever learned in mariachi.
In my country, in my town, we celebrate Santa Cecilia too. I really like it. Yeah, next year I I will be here.
Babies and microphones. You can't keep them away.
It's like, that's my new toy. No, but that's so much fun though, and like, you know, passing it on to the next generation. Then you said a little with the kid, the young man who was you know, singing and everything, and said he's been doing that for a few years now. And yeah, it's really, I mean, it's passing the you know, your even though you might be in a new country, passing the cultural heritage of the country that you came from and your own cultural heritage down to the next generation. Always a good thing, and always a good way to celebrate it in church as well.
Yeah, and bringing it to other people too. I mean, I went to Mexico several years ago, and there were mariachis all around, and it was terrific. And to think that you can go to church and hear it right there, and, you know, sort of get a feel for Mexican culture, and obviously all in honor of Saint Cecilia, the patron saint of music. Who knew church could be so much fun?
That's right, and such colorful costumes and everything. It's great. Well, that's it for this edition of Currents. Coming up tomorrow, one of the hottest concert tickets right now might actually be a sister act. Yeah, as a matter of fact. I'll talk with some of the Daughters of St. Paul Choir about their Christmas concert tour.
I was going to say, we're not talking about the actress. Okay, well, until then, be sure to check out our website at currentsny.net. You can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter as well. We hope you do. Well, for all of us here at Currents, I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night. Yeah, Whoopi will not.